Hey, I'm Lena. I never imagined I'd be sharing this story during my honeymoon, but here I am, and honestly, typing it all out feels like a weight being lifted off my chest. My husband? He's way more excited about this than the tropical drinks by the pool. He keeps telling me, "You need to tell them. You need to get this off your chest." So here it goes. Before I get into the juicy details of how my own family tried to hijack my wedding day for my sister's twisted agenda, and how me and my husband flipped the script in the most savage way possible, please take a moment and hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. Trust me, you don't want to miss a second of this. Let me start at the beginning. Growing up, it was painfully clear. My parents had a favorite. Spoiler alert, it wasn't me. It was my older sister. And they didn't even try to hide it. If my sister accused me of anything, I got punished immediately. If I accused her, even with proof, the only thing I got was a warning to stop causing trouble. I was the family scapegoat, the one to blame, the one who had to carry the blame for every little thing that went wrong. Birthday parties? Cake always had to be the flavor she liked. My preferences didn't matter. I'd see her smiling, blowing out the candles on her cake while I sat quietly at the side. Even when it was my birthday, my parents made sure to put her front and center. Gifts? She'd get more, better, newer. I'd get the leftovers, the afterthoughts. Trips and outings? Every single one was planned around her. If I tried to suggest something, I was dismissed or told it wasn't appropriate. It was like I was invisible. She wasn't just the golden child. She was a tyrant in training. First, she mostly ignored me. But when we hit our teenage years, the dynamic shifted and it got a lot worse. My sister started losing friends. Maybe they moved away, maybe they grew tired of her attitude, who knows? I never really had a close relationship with her, but I could tell she was spending a lot more time alone. Yet, instead of feeling sympathy, she turned her anger toward me. Suddenly, I wasn't just the scapegoat, I was the enemy. The target of her frustration, her jealousy, her cruelty. She accused me of everything, spreading rumors, stealing things, sabotaging her friendships. And, predictably, my parents believed her every single time. They stopped letting me hang out with friends. "They're not good influences," they'd say. Or worse, "Why can't you be more like your sister? She values family. You don't." I felt trapped, isolated, and utterly alone. One day, at a family gathering, my cousins invited me to come hang out with them at an event. I had to say no, I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. When they asked why, I said something I probably shouldn't have, that my sister didn't have any friends, so I wasn't allowed to either, so she wouldn't feel left out. Word got back to the adults. My parents were furious. But they weren't mad at my sister, no, they were mad at me for lying. They grounded me for a whole month. Even then, nothing changed. To save face, my sister switched schools. She made new friends, and my parents made sure to brag about her success to anyone who would listen. But she never stopped going after me. Her new friends came over to our house and bullied me. My parents called it light teasing and told me to toughen up. I stopped inviting friends over because my sister would accuse them of stealing and my parents would believe her. Then came the boys. The first boyfriend I brought home told me my sister tried to flirt with him, showing up in revealing clothes, batting her eyelashes, telling him how terrible I was. When he rejected her, she flipped the story and said he was hitting on her. My parents believed her again. I hated her with everything I had. But I kept my head down, buried myself in books, and dreamed of escaping. College was my only way out. I worked harder than I ever thought I could, earned a full scholarship to a decent school, and announced it on social media so no one could stop me. College saved me, gave me space, freedom, and for the first time, hope. That's when I met him, my husband. The guy who would help me take the sweetest revenge imaginable. We wanted a simple wedding. Nothing fancy, just family and a honeymoon in Europe. Since his family lived far away and mine was local, we decided to have it in my hometown. And that's when everything spiraled out of control. My parents insisted on meeting him. I was nervous, but I agreed. What I didn't expect was the nightmare that followed. My husband went prepared, with a hidden recorder, ready for whatever drama my family was about to throw at us. They didn't disappoint. They told him their demand, that my sister would walk down the aisle before me in a wedding dress. Because apparently it's not right for the younger sister to get married first. They wanted to stage a fake wedding for my sister. On my wedding day. In my venue. With photos, a dress, a cake, everything. My husband and I couldn't believe it. But we weren't about to let them ruin my day. We started plotting our own plan, one that would have them eating their words and leaving empty-handed. After that crazy conversation with my parents and my sister's insane demand, my husband and I knew there was only one way forward. We had to play their game, but on our terms. No way was my sister going to hijack the one day I had dreamed about since I was a kid. And no way was I going to let my parents use this as another way to control me or make me feel small. First, we played along. It wasn't hard. They thought they had me right where they wanted. They believed I would cave, that I'd let my sister walk down the aisle first, stealing my thunder just like she'd done so many other times in life. But little did they know my husband and I had a plan that would make them think they were winning, but really it was us holding all the cards. My husband, who's the absolute master of calm under pressure, took charge of the negotiations, or rather the charade. We let my parents and sister think we were compromising, agreeing to let my sister have her special moment on the aisle first. But behind closed doors, every decision we made was carefully designed to mess with their expectations. For example, they wanted the best of everything, the fanciest flowers, the top photographer, the most expensive menu options. So we acted like we were considering all those, then always picked the cheapest or second cheapest options available. When my husband secretly took my sister to the venue to test the food and flowers, he sighed and told her it was a shame we didn't want to abuse my parents' generosity by going for the best stuff. Of course, my sister flipped out and demanded that my parents pay for the best, and my parents, thinking they were doing me a favor, promised they would cover the cost. Same trick worked with the photographer and the DJ. We got them to pay top dollar for everything, while we kept the wedding budget low on our end. There was a snag with the dress. My parents had picked out a dress for me that was, to put it nicely, hideous. It wasn't my style at all and would have looked awful on me. First, we planned to say yes and then secretly wear my own dress. But when my mom sent me a message to get my approval in writing, I knew I had to stand my ground. So I refused, politely but firmly. My husband went over to my parents' house to see what he could do. My sister, ever the schemer, suggested ruining my preferred dress so I'd be forced to wear the ugly one. My husband pretended to agree, all part of the act. Throughout all this, we made sure all communication was face-to-face or over the phone. My husband played the part of the controlling and neurotic boyfriend perfectly, convincing them that I was obsessing over every detail and wouldn't let anything go. They believed it and never risked putting anything in writing. Meanwhile, my sister tried to flirt with my husband at one point, but he just acted conflicted, the perfect mix of avoiding her advances without outright rejecting her in a way that would cause a scene. He even pretended to tell my family things without my knowledge, to convince them he was on their side. But the one thing my husband never told them was that we had hired security for the wedding. A professional bodyguard would be at the venue, and the plan was simple. No one was going to let my sister walk down the aisle. Despite all the stress, the whole thing felt almost funny to us. We joked that this extravagant, expensive wedding was basically back pay for all the emotional damage my parents had caused me over the years. Wedding day. Finally, the day arrived. The moment we'd been waiting for and planning for was here. The venue was buzzing with nervous energy. Guests were arriving, dressed to the nines, unaware of the drama quietly unfolding behind the scenes. My parents and sister thought their plan was foolproof. They would wait until everyone was seated, then have my sister walk down the aisle first. The idea was that since the bride traditionally arrives late, no one would notice the switch until it was too late for me to stop it. But we had prepared for every detail. My bridesmaids were briefed and told to follow my dad's lead, so they would proceed down the aisle even if I wasn't ready yet. A close friend, one of my husband's friends who loved stirring up drama just as much as he did, was in on the plan and ready to help. When the bridal song started, the doors opened and I walked down the aisle. My dad looked shocked, almost frozen in disbelief. He tried to look behind me but couldn't see the venue entrance from where he stood. That's when his phone rang. It was my sister calling, and he abruptly left with a muttered excuse about something coming up, leaving me standing there alone. The guests gasped, confused whispers spread, and the friend who was part of the plan loudly asked what was going on. I put on my best teary, hurt face and said, "He told me it wasn't supposed to be me here." The friend repeated the question loudly so everyone could hear, stirring up even more confusion. Meanwhile, security discreetly stepped in. The bodyguard, looking every bit the professional, made sure no one unauthorized got in, including my sister. The aftermath. What followed was chaos. My sister arrived at the venue dressed in a wedding gown, ready to steal my moment. The security guard wouldn't let her in, telling her the venue was the wrong one. After all, there was already a bride. My dad showed up, threatening to call the police, but the security guard calmly explained he was hired by us and was doing his job. My dad realized it was too late. My mom and some relatives tried to manage the damage, but guests were aghast at my family's behavior. My sister was screaming and crying, kicking the floor like a child. My dad looked ready to lose it but was held back. My husband, ever the actor, denied any involvement, gaslighting them perfectly while secretly laughing on the inside. Though my parents tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, everyone who witnessed the drama saw the truth. The whole wedding became a powerful, unforgettable moment, not just for us but for everyone who saw my family's true colors. And finally, for once in my life, I got the victory I deserved. The day after the wedding was a strange mix of relief and lingering tension. I woke up in a hotel room that finally felt like mine, not just because it was where I was with my husband, but because it was a space free from the toxic grip of my parents and sister. For the first time in years, I didn't have to pretend, didn't have to brace myself for the next verbal attack or manipulation. Yet, as the sun streamed through the window, I knew this fragile peace was only the beginning of a longer, more complicated journey. My phone buzzed relentlessly, calls and texts from my parents and sister poured in, an unrelenting storm. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, torn between dread and curiosity. Would they apologize? Beg for forgiveness? Or continue the same pattern of blame and gaslighting that had defined my life? With trembling hands, I answered the first call. "My daughter," my mother began, her voice a strange mixture of sadness and accusation. "We just wanted what was best for you, for the family." Her words felt like a broken record, rehearsed and hollow. My father's voice soon joined in, booming with false authority. "Tradition is important. Family unity is sacred. You should have honored that." But none of it made sense anymore. The family they preached about was one built on favoritism, lies, and cruelty, not love or respect. Then came the texts, dozens of them flooding my phone. "You ruined everything. You betrayed us. You'll regret this forever." And from my sister, the worst of all. "You think this is a victory? You're just delaying the inevitable. You'll be alone with no one left. You've lost your family." Each message was a dagger, stabbing old wounds that never truly healed. But this time I refused to bleed. I showed the messages to my husband. He looked at them with a steady calm, a fierce protective fire in his eyes. He reminded me, "This is their venom. Don't swallow it. You are stronger than their hate." Together, we began documenting everything: calls, texts, voicemail recordings. Every interaction became a piece of undeniable evidence against their toxic behavior. I felt a strange sense of power, knowing that their attempts to control me were being exposed. We decided to take a bold step. My husband posted carefully selected screenshots in our extended family's group chat, accompanied by a heartfelt message. "I'm reaching out because I need your help. We've been dealing with years of unfair treatment and manipulation from some family members. This isn't about tearing family apart. It's about seeking understanding, respect, and accountability. Please stand with us. The response was a mixed bag. Some cousins and aunts expressed shock and sadness, sending words of support and encouragement. Others stayed silent, perhaps afraid to choose sides or unwilling to get involved. But the silence from my immediate family was deafening. My parents and sister refused to engage. They had built a fortress of denial and gaslighting, and they weren't ready to tear it down. The weeks that followed were filled with cold shoulders and empty invitations. Family events were missed or boycotted, and holidays felt lonelier than ever. But through the isolation, I began to discover something unexpected: freedom. Without their constant judgment and interference, I started to rebuild my sense of self. Therapy sessions helped me unpack years of emotional baggage, the guilt, the self-doubt, the loneliness. I began writing, turning my pain into stories that resonated with others. I surrounded myself with friends who became my chosen family, people who loved me unconditionally. My husband's support was unwavering. He stood not only as my partner but as my fiercest ally. Where I was vulnerable, he was strong. Where I doubted, he was sure. His belief in me restored my shattered confidence. One night, sitting on our porch under a sky full of stars, I confessed my fears to him. What if they never forgive me? What if I'm truly alone? He took my hands in his and said with certainty, "Family isn't just about blood. It's about those who choose to stand by you. We'll build our own family, one based on trust, love, and respect." His words became my mantra. But healing wasn't linear. Old wounds reopened. Memories of years of neglect and cruelty haunted me. Sometimes, late at night, the weight of loneliness pressed down, threatening to crush me. But each time I reminded myself of how far I'd come. And through it all, I realized something vital. I am worthy. I deserve love and respect. Toxic family ties do not define me. If you're listening and struggling with toxic relationships, know this: you're not alone. There is hope. You have the strength to break free and build a life filled with genuine connection. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Together, we can find strength and healing. The honeymoon trip, as magical and dreamlike as it was, couldn't fully erase the shadows that clung to me. City, each cobblestone street we walked, whispered reminders of battles won and those still ahead. I was free but not yet unscarred. Returning home from Europe, the real fight began. Though my parents and sister had been publicly embarrassed at the wedding, unable to crash the ceremony with their cruel, entitled demands, they were far from defeated. Their rage simmered under a thin veneer of normalcy, but it was poison that leaked into every corner of my life. Words spread fast. Not the kind that brings support or sympathy, but gossip meant to isolate me. Rumors painted me as the selfish daughter who betrayed her family, the ungrateful girl who humiliated them for no reason. My husband was painted as a scheming outsider, an interloper who had poisoned me against those who loved me. First, I refused to acknowledge these attacks. I was determined not to let their toxicity seep into my newfound peace. I threw myself into my marriage, my studies, and my writing, a blog that started as a small outlet for my pain but grew into a platform for others like me. But isolation is a quiet predator. Invitations to family gatherings dried up. Friends connected through my family became distant. Social media messages turned cold or disappeared entirely. Strangers in online communities whispered their judgments in private messages. It was as if the world I knew had fractured and I was falling through the cracks. One late afternoon, scrolling through a distant cousin's Facebook comments, I found a post ridiculing the bride who couldn't keep her family in check, mocking my husband and making cruel jokes about our wedding. My breath hitched. The ache in my chest was suffocating. Closed the app and sat frozen, feeling a strange mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. My husband found me there, silent and shaken. "You're not alone," he said softly, pulling me close. "We'll face this together." That night, wrapped in the quiet of our apartment, we made a pact. No more hiding, no more silence. We would protect ourselves, emotionally, mentally, and physically. We would build boundaries so strong that no whisper of hate could break them. We blocked toxic relatives and anyone who threatened our peace on social media. I began therapy sessions, a painful but necessary journey into understanding the deep wounds left by a lifetime of neglect and manipulation. In those sessions, I confronted the raw truth. My family's love was conditional and damaging. People who should have protected me often hurt me the most. And yet, I still craved their approval, their acceptance, the family I never really had. It was a paradox that twisted my heart. Around that time, my blog began to grow. Sharing my story was cathartic, but it became more than that. It became a lifeline for others drowning in toxic family waters. Messages poured in daily. "Thank you for giving voice to what I couldn't say. Your courage helped me stand up to my own parents. I never felt alone until I read your story." These words, strangers' vulnerability mirrored in mine, were balm to my soul. They reminded me that pain shared was pain halved, and healing could ripple outward. But the battle wasn't over. My parents and sister, fueled by wounded pride and denial, refused to accept any responsibility. Attempts at reconciliation were met with blame and gaslighting. "You're tearing the family apart. You don't understand how much we did for you. You're the problem." Each message was a minefield. My husband became my shield, listening patiently as I vented frustrations and fears. One day, my sister sent a message so venomous it shocked me to my core. She blamed me for her humiliation at the wedding, called my husband a liar and snake, and even wished for my downfall. She suggested, with a twisted certainty, that he would cheat on me. I showed the message to my husband. Calm and steady, he took screenshots, documented every threatening message and call. He set up a group chat with distant relatives, explaining our side and asking for support. His meticulous record-keeping was more than a tactic. It was a declaration that we would not be bullied into silence. Since then, silence, a fragile peace, has settled. Though wary, we cautiously build our life together. My husband's support is my fortress, his belief in me a constant reminder that love can be genuine, unwavering. I'm learning to redefine family. The one you choose, not just the one you're born into. If you're watching this, feeling trapped or unheard in your own family struggles, know you're not alone. There is strength in walking away, power in protecting your heart, and hope in choosing your own path. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Together, we create a community where voices are heard, wounds are healed, and new beginnings are possible. The aftermath of the wedding debacle was only the beginning of a new chapter, one where I had to navigate not only the external chaos but also the internal journey toward reclaiming my life, identity, and peace. For years, my family had tried to control me through manipulation, favoritism, and outright cruelty. But now, standing beside my husband, I understood that true strength lay in breaking free, not in conforming. Quiet war after the storm. After the fallout at the wedding, my parents and sister retreated into silence at first, but soon their subtle attacks began anew. It wasn't the loud confrontations of before. It was a quiet war fought through whispers, veiled accusations, and attempts to isolate me from the family circle. Invitations stopped coming. Family photos no longer included me. Phone calls went unanswered or were met with cold indifference. But the hardest was the emotional gaslighting. They insisted I was the one tearing the family apart, the black sheep who refused to forgive and forget. I realized then that forgiveness wasn't a gift I owed them. It was something I might offer if, and only if, genuine change happened. And that change was nowhere in sight. Building new boundaries. My husband and I began setting boundaries with relentless consistency. No more secret calls from my parents demanding information or compliance. No more guilt trips about family loyalty when what they truly wanted was obedience. This was not easy. Old wounds reopened with every confrontation, but I learned to say no without apology. To hang up the phone when voices turned cruel. To block toxic messages before they could poison my day. Therapy became a sanctuary, a place to rebuild my shattered self-esteem, to unpack decades of neglect, and to learn how to protect my heart without hardening it. My therapist helped me see the difference between love and control, between healthy family dynamics and cycles of abuse disguised as affection. The power of choice. One of the most liberating lessons was realizing that family is not just who you are born to, it's who you choose to keep in your life. Friends, chosen family, and allies who accepted me unconditionally became my new tribe. Their love wasn't complicated by favoritism or judgment. They celebrated my victories and held me through my struggles. We started hosting dinners, inviting those who had stood by us, building new traditions that felt safe and authentic. I also discovered a passion for advocacy, sharing my story through blogs, social media, and community groups. Knowing others were fighting similar battles gave me strength. Together, we broke the silence that toxic families try to impose. Facing the past, forging the future. Confronting my parents and sister was sometimes unavoidable. When they tried to re-enter my life with apologies that felt more like manipulations, I stood firm. I will not let you back in until I see real change, I told them. I deserve respect, honesty, and kindness, not control or cruelty. They reacted predictably with denial, anger, and attempts to turn others against me. But I no longer feared their judgment. My husband stood by me like a rock, reminding me every day that my worth wasn't defined by their acceptance. Small victories, big healing. Some days were harder than others. Memories would trigger anxiety, setbacks threatened my resolve. But every boundary respected, every lie exposed, every new friendship forged was a step toward healing. I celebrated milestones quietly, my first solo vacation, a promotion at work, the day I no longer cried when my phone rang with their name. A new definition of family. Today, my family is made of those who uplift me, who see me, who honor my truth. It's not about blood, it's about respect, love, and genuine care. If you're listening and feel trapped by toxic family ties, know that you are not alone. You have the power to rewrite your story. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to protect yourself. And it's okay to find peace on your own terms. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories about resilience, courage, and reclaiming your life. Together, we are stronger. The wedding day was supposed to be a joyful new beginning, a celebration of love, unity, and hope. But it turned into the battlefield where years of cruelty, neglect, and emotional manipulation collided with truth, resilience, and justice. What happened that day was more than a simple act of revenge. It was the moment I reclaimed my life. The fallout, a family in disarray. Right after the ceremony, an eerie silence enveloped my family. The carefully constructed facade they had maintained for so long crumbled into dust. My parents, who had controlled every detail of my life, were left powerless and exposed. My sister, once so full of arrogance and entitlement, was reduced to tears and rage on the floor. It was surreal watching them unravel. Their desperate attempts to contact me after the wedding were futile. Calls, texts, and messages were filled with anger, manipulation, and blame, but I simply refused to respond. For the first time, I was the one holding the cards. Their power over me was broken, and they knew it. Finding my voice and healing deep wounds. Years of emotional neglect had left deep scars. I was not just fighting against their toxicity, I was battling years of self-doubt, internalized blame, and fear. Therapy became my sanctuary, a place where I could unravel the complex web of my past without judgment. I learned about the psychological effects of favoritism and emotional abuse, how it warps your sense of self and colors every relationship. I discovered the importance of boundaries, not just as walls to keep others out, but as sacred spaces to protect my well-being. Tears in therapy were many, but so were the breakthroughs. Slowly, I reclaimed my identity, one that was never defined by my family's approval or disapproval. Building a chosen family, love beyond blood. Isolation had been my lifelong companion, but it was replaced with community. Friends who accepted me fully, who never questioned my worth, became my family. Together, we celebrated victories small.